Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual neurolinguistic programming and cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues, both court-appointed and private, marriage and relationship coaching, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one sessions in both French or English, and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMB Therapy and Coaching Services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found at lifecoach.drdanamzallag.com. Today, I'm very excited to have for our fifth episode of season 29 a very special guest and author of Life Without a Tie, Mr. Ray Martin. And just like every of my past episode, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Ray, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, by the way. I'm best known as author of Life Without a Tie because I was a businessman living in London some years ago, and that life, as I knew it, sort of imploded and came to an end. And I decided to take a 6-month sabbatical to recover from some personal shocks. And unbeknownst to me, and completely accidentally and unplanned, things didn't go according to plan on my 6-month sabbatical. I ended up living out of my backpack for 14 years and took me around 28 different countries and started the foundation. It just became a journey that took over my life. And so many people, Dan, asked me about the journey as I was in it, during it, and after it. Many of them sort of almost begged me to write a book so they could read the stories. And so I ended up becoming an author. It was never my vision to become an author, but I ended up writing a book called Life Without a Tie, which chronicled those 14 years. But particularly people wanted to know what was the wisdom and insight that I gained from that journey. And so I often give talks and speak about that. And I'm a leadership coach is my main job. So I'm distilling that wisdom and knowledge every day, helping others become, better leaders. So that's me in a nutshell.
Well, thank you so much for logging in that far away in the UK.
That's okay.
So first and foremost, the topic. I mean, I'm an author myself, and I
Okay.
have written several books in the past. And coming up with the title is somewhat difficult, especially when it comes
Yeah.
to a form of autobiography. When you share with people your journey in being an expat living
Yeah.
and in different countries, etc. So if you could just tell us why or how did the title Life Without a Tie came up?
Yeah. I was desperately trying to use my logical brain to come up with the title for this book. And it didn't work. And one day I was just out for a run in the time I was writing it.
Okay.
And the idea Life Without a Tie just dropped into my head. And as soon as I saw it, I knew that was the title. And I'll tell you why, because what happened in my life, I think of all of us. Our lives are quite strongly defined, or certainly our character is strongly defined by 4 different things: the life partner that we have, the house that we live in, the career that we've chosen, and our community of friends. Now, for most people, those are 4 sorts of corners of their lives, a bit like the corners of a tent or guide ropes on a tent that tie down the tent and stop it from blowing away in the wind. And so this book was about my life as a businessman. I also had a 5th tie, which was the tie I wore with my shirt and tie in my suit as a businessman.
Yes.
And so when that life imploded and I decided to leave it to go on a backpacking sabbatical, it just made sense to say, well, what I'm describing is life without a tie. That's the tie that I wear on my necktie, plus the 4 ties of my I got divorced, I lost my home, I left my community of friends, and I decided to quit my career as a businessman. I did all of those 4 things all at the same time, and it was a catastrophe.
So the metaphor of a tie can be like a knot, a tie that you're tied, like the tie that you put around your neck, but at the same time, you're not tied to being where you are, because most people nowadays, they're tied to their job that they hate.
Yes.
They're tied to a location that they want to change, but yet they're too afraid to take the change. So the change in environment that you created for yourself, Ray,
Yeah.
Didn't you fear the unknown, especially after what you've gone through with losing your home, losing your marriage, etc.? What brought you? Did you just wake up one day and say you got to get the hell out of here, or did you just take some time to decide if that was the right move for you?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I was really uncomfortable and certainly had a huge amount of fear when I made that decision because I was leaving a life that was completely known to me, in which I had a lot of admiration and respect coming from people who saw me as a successful CEO.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going into a life where I was going to be completely anonymous and statusless as a backpacker around, going around Asia in my 40s, with no idea of how the end, how that trip would play out or end, or what I might learn or discover. But I knew I had to, because just as I was in the sort of the pits of the divorce, and my father died at the same time as all of this was happening, I was in the pits of all that, and I read a book called The Top Five Regrets of the Dying. It's a really famous book. Many people around the world have read it. It's by a nurse called Bronnie Ware, and she works in a hospice.
Mm-hmm.
And she said she asks every person in the last days of their lives, what do you most regret about your life? And she said they
Oh,
all.
yes, I read this book. It's
She said they, yeah.
she said about it's not about the thing that they did, but the thing that didn't do.
Well, she said that they all say the same five things around their regrets, and when they uh, boil it down, the number one regret that everyone has at the end of their life is, I wished I'd lived my life true to myself and not the life that others expected of me.
Mm.
And that, and I was really in the pits of despair when I was reading this, because obviously my life was sort of falling apart. And I thought, gosh, that feels so real and true to me right now. Even though I'm working as a CEO and I've had some success at that, it doesn't really feel like it's my true life. I feel like I'm living someone else's life doing this. And I had no idea what living true to myself would actually be like and look like, which is why I decided to take the sabbatical, so I could go and get some new insight about life. And I wanted to go a long way away from where I was actually living and staying, so that I could. Sorry about that. You can hear the phone ringing in the background. I'm trying to stop it. Sorry. Sorry about this. Um, so yeah, I wanted to go a long way away from my normal environment, so I could get that insight from a different source. And that's why I went to Asia in the East to tap into some of that mystic wisdom and understanding. Yeah.
Well, I mean, a lot of the listeners here, they would say, well, why don't you go to a country that actually speak English? Now, in Asia, yeah, you may say that if you go to Tokyo and all, yeah, this is a lot of English speaking there, but wasn't the language a big barrier in adapting to the culture, adapting to the language as well, and adapting to the people? Did you find this to be very difficult as well, Ray?
Not so much. I'll tell you why. Because I was obviously, in my mind, I was only going for 6 months, and I was a tourist. And most of the places that I was going and staying and visiting, people spoke enough English to understand what you needed in terms of food and shelter and all the basics like that. So no, it wasn't so much of a problem. It was only when I sort of the journey started to extend and I started to spend longer periods, particularly in Thailand, which was a country I had a lot of resonance with. I loved it there. I lived in a place called Chiang Mai,
Okay.
and there, to be able to stay long term, you need special visas from the government there. And so I actually took on an educational visa, which gave me a 1 year stay in the country, as long as I went to Thai language school. So I would twice a week, I went to study Thai at school and started to learn how to speak the language. And I did pretty well in the time I lived there. So it wasn't so bad, really.
So overall, so what if you could tell our audience what was your biggest challenge? I mean, when you did when you expated yourself in a different country that you were not familiar with, so to speak,
Mm.
what exactly did you struggle the most with?
Well, I'd say initially the biggest challenge for me was staying psychologically safe, because I kind of made some massive re-engineering adjustments to my life. I mean, I sold my house in London, got rid of most of my stuff there, gave it away or sold it. So I reduced my ownership down to one bag of clothes weighing 22 kilos and a laptop computer, and that was everything I had left in the world at that point. So
Okay.
logistically and financially, everything was re-engineered. But when I arrived in Thailand with my stuff, I was still full of fear, guilt, shame about the failure of my life, my marriage, and all the things in it. I was scared about the future, very, very anxious. The noise in my head was really a sort of 10 out of 10 level most of the time. And so you wouldn't notice that from the outside. You just see this guy wearing his shorts and t-shirt with his backpack. But inside it was like, torrentially noisy.
Hmm.
And so that was the biggest challenge. So I combated that challenge. So I talked to people about it that I met as a traveler. And one of them, a wise person, said, well, why don't you go and do a Vipassana retreat? I don't know if you know what that is, Dan, but I didn't at the time. I'd never heard of it. And basically, you go into a Buddhist monastery for 10 days and you are taught by the monks how to meditate in silence for 10 days. It's just absolutely amazing thing to do. And that whole experience kind of changed my mindset and really calmed me down a lot and helped me to understand the way our minds work and how they kind of really inhibit our growth in some ways.
So since, I mean, our podcast is global, thank God.
Yes.
A lot of Americans are also expat in different countries.
Yeah.
Depends, where it is. It could be in Thailand, it could be in France, it could be anything.
Yeah.
So especially those who consider leaving the country, wherever that is, it doesn't necessarily mean it could be UK, it could be US, it
Yeah.
could be Canada. What do you recommend them to be able to start slowly but surely to adapt to that new culture, to the new language? Is there a specific trick or advice that you would give them, that those who are considering leaving the country of comfort and to go and explore the rest of the world? What is the best approach to take without them feeling overwhelming?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I can only answer from my personal
Well, of course,
experiences.
it's subjective, definitely.
Yeah,
Overall.
yeah. But certainly, trying to learn some of the basic language is going to really help.
Okay.
Um, and what I do when I was in several different countries, and the very first thing I ever learned when I get to a new country is the words for please and thank you.
Yes.
And then the second thing I learn are the numbers, because everything, all the numbers determine what things cost. And so if you can ask how much something is in the native language, obviously people afford you quite a lot of respect straight away because they know you understand their language enough to be able to price things in the language.
Mhm.
And it stops them from giving you what they call tourist prices because you're asking in that language, what the price is. So they kind of sort of assume that you know more than you probably actually do.
Mhm.
And then just asking, you learn the phrase. One of the phrases I learned in several places I was in, so I can't give it in every language, is how do you say that in Thai? Or how do you say that in Spanish? That's a phrase you need to learn. How do you say that in X language? And then that person tells you, and then you start to use it
Okay.
because you learn what you need to use as you go, and then getting out and about, eating in different places and visiting some of the places that the locals hang out. This is going to give you this cultural feel.
Well, this is interesting, but again, when it comes to adapting to the new food, because sometimes Americans, when they go to another country, they do not really adapt to the new food, or they cannot eat
Mm.
whatever that is. What do you recommend them to be able to? So, would you say to go and figure out if there's any like grocery store that still serve the American cuisine, or do you recommend them to go and eat the local cuisine and then just try to adapt?
Oh gosh, I don't know if it's somewhere between the two, probably. I don't know. I don't know. I was quite, one of my values is exploration. I've got, 4 or 5 core values that I live by. And so I was personally quite excited to try out things I've never eaten before. And quite happy to leave behind the typical British food that I was used to and get into Asian cuisine and try all the different noodles and spices and stuff like this. Other people might just try a little bit, I don't know. It's very hard for me to say.
Okay. So overall, Ray, and I know that, like I said, those who are listening to the podcast, what get them inspired is the journey of each and every one that come on
Yeah,
the podcast, and this is what we call it the happiness journey. But
yeah,
then it becomes somewhat of a very big struggle because what others can do doesn't necessarily mean they can do it as well. So
Yeah.
able to kind of adapt or use our stories or our inspiring guest that comes in and
Yeah.
kind of, I want someone or I want listeners to be able to take something out of each podcast, either that they implement at any given time,
Yeah.
or obviously that they can actually get inspired by your own journey and figure
Yeah.
out how they can not replicate it the same way, but at
Yeah.
least get them to get out of their fear factor. Because
Yeah.
what stops them to be able to explore the world, because again, they don't know the certain like countries' policies about, like if you look at Dubai, for example,
Yeah.
or anywhere in the Emirate Arabs, you cannot do certain things that you would do here in the US, but in other
Yeah.
places will take you to jail. So
I
again,
got you.
understanding that culture can be very scary, because if they let's say do something, said, oh my god, am I going to get stopped by the cop, and then I have to go through the legal system, which I don't know much about. So
Me too. I've got to say, that's not my area of expertise. I don't know the laws and rules of every country at all, so
yeah,
can't really help with that.
well, no, definitely. But is that something that scared you as well when you went to another country?
Scared it would be too strong a word. I've got a lot of respect for the way those countries rule and govern, because you don't want to fall foul of the authorities, especially if it means your visa gets rescinded or you get that kind of restriction, which means you can't go back there or something. Okay. So yeah, so a healthy respect for the law and enforcement, but it never, I'm quite a law-abiding citizen, I guess. And I, remember the purpose of my journey was to educate myself and get new insight into life so that I could see and get a vision of what my true life would look like, because that's what I didn't know. Mm-hmm. So I was a very curious traveler when I was in all these different places. Okay. And I was really asking a lot of questions of all the different people I met, whether they lived in that country or whether they just temporarily moved there as expats. I was asking them about their lives and why they'd moved and what it was about for them, what they're trying to learn, what their vision for their life was, things like that. So I was trying to understand how other people were navigating the challenge of life itself. And that was fascinating to me. And that was really my main obsession with the whole trip. And that's why I ended up writing the book.
So the book was written just when you got back to UK, or was
no,
it? You were
traveling? Yeah, but I left in 2005, as I was saying, I did with the thought I'm going to be back by 2006. I'm only going for 6 months.
Okay.
And by the time I'd reached 2010, I'd already, started a massive fundraising foundation and run the New York Marathon to raise $15,000 for an elephant sanctuary in Thailand and an orphanage in Nepal. And I'd taken the money back to those places and deployed it, getting stuff built and getting roofs put on buildings and getting computers and stuff like this. So I was already in a completely different life 5 years into that journey. And every time I met people who saw what I was doing, I told them the story of how my life had imploded and how I'd left and how I had found out about these things and started this foundation and become a marathon runner at 50. And they all kind of went, oh, my God, that's incredible, Ray. They said, can I give you my email address? And I'd say, why is that? And they say, well, if you ever write a book about this, I'd really like to read the story whenever it comes out. So I said, oh, I'll take your email address, but I'm not a writer. I've got no intention of writing a book. And I just laughed at them. But after about 100 people, honestly, 5 years in, had given me their email addresses, I thought, oh, my God, Dan, the universe wants me to write a book. I'm getting this message all the time. So I'm being called to write this, but I have to write it. And so I thought, I don't know how to write a book. I've got no idea what to do. So at the time I was thinking that, I was in Chiang Mai in Thailand, and I saw that an American author was coming over from New York, and they'd advertised a 5-day writer's course on Facebook in Chiang Mai. And it was $1,200. And I wrote to her and said, I'm really interested in doing the course because I'm getting this calling to write a book, but I'm a complete and utter beginner, and I don't think I'd be suitable for the course. Would I be okay to join as a beginner? That was my number one question. And two, would I be able to do it for $500 because I don't have $1,200? I can't afford it. And she wrote back and she said, you'd totally be accepted as a beginner. And yeah, you can do it for $500. And so I thought, I took that as what I've referred to in the book. I took that as a confirmation signal that the decision I was making to take that course was the right decision. because I've got this idea that I talk about a lot now. How do you get confirmation signals on all the major decisions that you're struggling with? And this was the signal that gave me the confirmation that's the right thing.
Wow, wow, wow. So then how long did it take you to write this book, Ray?
So I did the course in 2010, but I didn't write a single page until about 2014. That's when I started.
Okay.
And I finished the manuscript, finally finished it in 2021. So it took me 7 years in total to get it on
Wow,
the page.
7 years.
Because I didn't return to UK until the journey ended in September of 2019. So even though I started writing in 2014, for the first 5 years I was writing, I was still in the journey. So I literally had no idea how it would end.
Well, right before the COVID and pandemic.
Yeah. And so then I returned to the UK in 2019 to finish I was about halfway through then, and I wrote the second half in the UK. Yeah.
That's incredible. And so overall, so those who actually are looking to write a book about their own journey as an expat, is it something that they have to approach the book as a form of autobiography in terms of like, well, this on this day, or is it as a form of a journal that they have to write this book?
That was one of the reasons I did the course, because there are what they call genres. There's loads of genres of books. You can write a fiction, you could write a novel where you draw on your life, but you're making up a complete new story, which it's based on, or you can write a memoir, which is what I did.
Okay.
And also I wanted my book, because I work in the field of coaching and people development.
Okay.
I didn't just want to write my story and say, this is what happened. I wanted to say specifically what I was learning from it and how it was changing my mindset and how it was giving me more stability, confidence, inner peace, courage, and how that was working. And in fact, actually, when my editors were working on the book with me, they asked me to make the last chapter of the book called What Did I Learn from This 14 Years? And I wrote these, what I call my 6 rules for happiness for life. And this is the best part of the book for someone who really wants something that's going to help them evolve and grow and develop, is reading these 6 rules for happiness, which are in the last chapter.
So I mean, I don't want any of the listeners to not buy your book. I want them to buy the book, but if you could give just a synopsis of those 6 rules of happiness.
Yeah, I can. So these are 6 rules that became really crystal clear for me after 14 years of living out my backpack, but also from being a CEO for 10 years in a corporate life before. They're sort of from both. The first rule for happiness: you must have a strong inner core as a foundation, which means you've got to be willing to commit to a life of self-awareness. If you're not willing to commit to a life of self-awareness, you have got really slim chance of being deeply happy and content.
Okay.
Because that's the first rule.
Okay.
Now, in that self-awareness are things like, what's my vision for life? What are my values? What sort of beliefs do I have that empower me? And what beliefs get in the way and limit me? Things like this. So we could have a big conversation just about that first rule, but you've got to be self-aware. And if you're not practicing self-awareness, you're not reflecting on reviewing what's happening and how to navigate inside yourself, you're really sunk.
Okay, perfect. The third rule.
The third rule, the second rule, by the way, is you've got to take full ownership for everything that happens. You can't blame or make excuses. So that's number 2. The third rule is become your own observer. And that means that you've got to know that you are not what goes on inside your head, your thinking. That is something that you observe when it's happening. You are the observer of your thinking. You're not the thoughts themselves. And this is a massive distinction. It's very important to learn about that. And we can't really do it justice in 1 minute, but you've got to start to be able to observe your thinking and observe and see yourself thinking, see yourself about to react in certain moments when you know it's not going to be a wise decision to react in that way, and take a pause and choose a different response to what's going on.
Okay.
So that's number 3. Number 4, build powerful, purposeful, and sustainable relationships. You cannot have a happy life without the loving and caring support of others around you, which means you've got to invest in all your relationships in an intentional way, as I call it, intentional. It means right from the very beginning, have the intention to build these relationships to last your life, to be kind, considerate, compassionate, helping others if you can, but building these powerful, purposeful, sustainable relationships is number 4 rule. Number 5, you want number 5?
Let's go ahead. Number 5.
Proactively look after your well-being, because I think this has become really important in the last decade,
Right?
particularly. Yeah, self-help. Well-being means looking after your physical health, your mental health, your spiritual health, and your emotional health, all of those.
Okay.
And there's a whole chapter on each of those, of course. And then if you're doing those 5, the 6th rule, which only applies if you are already doing all of those 5 for yourself, you must find others and empower them to live in the same way. Otherwise, you cannot learn how to integrate those 5 rules into yourself if you're not helping others do the same. It really helps you bed it in. So those are my 6 rules for happiness. Very, very briefly. That's the fastest I've ever gone through them.
That's amazing. So before we conclude the podcast, can you please let our listeners, where can they find your book?
Yeah, I mean, most people that I know buying the book on Amazon. It's widely available on Amazon. Okay. And I also have a website called lifewithoutatie.com.
Okay.
And there you can obviously find the links to places where you can buy the book. And if anyone wants a signed copy, a personal signed copy, they can order that on that site and I can sort it out for them. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Ray, that is all the time that we have for today's podcast.
Okay.
Again, thank you sincerely for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. And we all appreciate your participation and willingness to share your remarkable and expert knowledge with our large and loyal audience. Now,
brilliant.
To all of our million of listeners out there, we hope that you've enjoyed today's episode as much as we did. Now, we're very excited about what's ahead in season 29 of the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, featuring a lineup of incredible guests with powerful stories that will continue to uplift and inspire all of you. Now, here are some concluding words of wisdom. To all Americans living abroad, this message is for you. Thriving abroad isn't about luck. It's about resilience, open-mindedness, and the courage to keep showing up. You learn to listen more, judge less, and build bridges across worlds. You stop fearing change and start welcoming it. In discomfort, you find strength. In unfamiliar places, you find parts of yourself you never knew existed. And through it all, you don't just survive, you rise. Living in a foreign country for any period of time isn't just a move, it's a bold leap into the unknown. It means embracing uncertainty, learning to adapt, and finding beauty in differences. Every challenge has become a teacher. Every new custom is a chance to grow. My name is Dr. Dan Amzallag, and you may all keep pursuing your amazing journey in life.